So I says to my shelf, Shelf, what do you have for me today? This is Pariah, a sci-fi shooter developed by Digital Extremes and published in 2005. In terms of gameplay, it's very similar to 2003 title Unreal 2 The Awakening, which makes sense because they share a game engine. Unreal 2 used the Unreal 2 engine, stay with me here, and Pariah uses Unreal 2.5. Like Unreal 2, Pariah has large outdoor environments and vehicle levels, but it's actually completely linear. It also boasts a weapon upgrade system, which Unreal 2 didn't have, and claims to feature destructible environments. Not half bad for 0.5. But I'm willing to bet that you haven't heard of it, or if you have, you don't really know what the hell it is. Well, there are two reasons that Pariah has been utterly forgotten. First, it came out on the heels of game changer and mega hit Half-Life 2, and second, it's utterly forgettable. Let's look at the box. I'll give you about 5 seconds to absorb it. Okay, now can you tell me what's on the cover? There's a guy, I guess. No, I got this. Maybe a gun, maybe another person in the background. Wait, don't tell me. I got nothing. What's on there again? Oh, that's right, nothing! When you're trying to market a new IP, you should do something to stand out from the crowd, not just this generic stoic pose. Even the inside cover doesn't offer much more. Some Niobe face, some thumbnails, meh. Hey, at least the premise is original. You are Jack Mason. Oh, come on! What names did they reject before settling on Jack Mason? Cliff Stone? Brock Steele?
Roll fizzle beef.
One of only two things in Pariah that might be generously called a feature is the large outdoor environments. Huge indoor levels and semi-open outdoor areas do look reasonably nice, but overall Pariah looks and feels decidedly last gen. It's not helped by the way the pickup items just float in mid-air, which seems needlessly old school. And the combat is about as deep as playing Pyro with a one-button mouse. It might look a bit better than what you see here, because I had to turn visual effects pretty much off. That's because explosions or any kind of visual effect causes the screen to blank out and flicker like seizures are going out of style. Oh yeah, we've got compatibility problems with a game for Windows XP. Unfortunately, or not, Groove Games is no more, so troubleshooting is out of the question. Some rooting around on the web pulled up the only extant piece of advice they could offer on the matter. If you've got an NVIDIA card, roll back the drivers to their pre-2005 versions. I'm not saying I would do that, because it's insulting that they would even suggest it, but even if I would, my graphics card didn't exist in 2005, so I doubt it would take kindly to the antiquated drivers. But putting the visual effects at minimum works, so let's just go with that. Jack Mason is a combat medic, emphasis on the combat in capital letters underscored and in 72-point font using word art. They don't give an excuse for Mason's absurd combat prowess. He's not wearing powered armor, but he can do ridiculous things like bull rush enemies with a shotgun while tanking machine gun fire to the face, or fire a sniper rifle zoomed in while jumping 10 feet in the air. Mason's abilities as a medic extend to him carrying around a medkit, something which lots of other non-medically inclined game heroes have done in the past. Pariah tries to make it more interesting by having excessive use of the medical kit met with negative side effects, but that falls flat. For one, it's just a bit of screen blurring, which also happens if you sprint for more than 3 seconds, like in Far Cry 2. And since we had to turn the visual effects off, we don't even get the screen blur. As the game begins, Mason has been assigned to escort a cryo-frozen patient from a massive prison called the Anvil to Alliance HQ by dropship. The escorts he was supposed to have were reassigned.
I've got here 2 T5s listed as escort.
Sorry, Doctor. Those ships were reassigned this morning. Looks like you're on your own.
But I'm sure it'll be fine.
These new filters smell like baby shit.
Not sure what that smells like.
Oh my god! That's disgusting!
These new filters smell like baby shit.
Not sure what that smells like.
What the fuck? Who would write that? Who would say that? Oh my god! Once in the air, he has barely enough time to remark on how safe everything seems when his transport is shot down with a missile.
Doesn't look that bad from up here.
Mason and Stubbs survive, but I am sad to report that the baby shit guys do not. In the crash, the cryo casket is damaged and Karina, the patient, is released. Because the game doesn't bother explaining its own damn plot, she's understandably confused.
How'd I get a virus?
We're not really sure how it transmits yet. Maybe through blood.
Blood?
The pilot, Stubbs, sneaks up behind and shoots her, getting infected blood all over Mason. You son of a bitch. Is the twist going to be that Mason is infected? Because you just showed us the virus infecting his blood, and we're like 5 minutes in. And where the hell did Stubbs come from anyway? Karina gets shot, cut to Mason's reaction, then back, and whoa! Where was he hiding? He just comes out of nowhere.
What?
Anyway, scavengers attack, and while Mason is off deactivating a turret, Stubbs is killed and Karina captured.
I had to find her before the infection spread.
Why? They're lawless scavengers. They just shot down your dropship, killed your pilot, and they tried to kill you. Let the virus take them all out! On the way to the scavenger camp to rescue Karina, Mason comes across a wrecked shroud ship left over from the war and takes the opportunity to narrate.
A shroud relic. You wouldn't find anything like this in a museum.
There are only a few bits of narration throughout the entire game, and even fewer of them actually happen during levels. We'll talk more about these later. The first part of the game is littered with destructible objects. They only programmed 3 destructible items into the game. A concrete pillar, which every bit of construction on the planet is based on. A guard tower, every one of which is aged and crumbled in the exact same way, leaving one strut missing and one weaker than the others. And finally, metal plates that cover railings until you shoot them. Remind you of anything? Mason rescues Karina and then looks for transportation. He finds some kind of weird armored tractor, but Karina runs off without him.
Karina!
This is the first of only a few vehicle levels in the entire game. Compared to Enter the Matrix, I can deal with pretty much anything, but still, it's kinda dumb. The vehicle weapons are useless, and they handle like a Halo 1 Warthog with 4 flat tires. Since you aim your guns and steer with the mouse, you'll swerve all over the place, and even this heavily armored vehicle gets damaged way too easily. If your vehicle gets destroyed, you'll have to walk the rest of the way. Some enemies show up in speeder bikes and motorcycles, but you can't shoot the driver out, so there's no way to steal or hijack them. Eventually, Karina shows up in her own tractor, and Mason gets on the turret.
Don't give me that look. Take the guns.
This is better than driving yourself, since you can actually use the gun, but it's still annoying. At one point, the tractor stalls out, and you have to sit there while Karina gets it going again. Brain-dead enemies drive up on their speeder bikes, and you blow them away with dual rocket launchers. I especially love how the tractor starts moving again before the stalling sound effect finishes, and then you drive away, leaving the sound physically behind you. Classy stuff, Pariah. After that, Karina and Mason go to a radio tower to get in touch with the Alliance. Mason goes inside, and Karina stays in the car and pretends to drive. Yeah, digital extremes, you might want to fire your Photoshop artist. After blowing away another 100 or so scavengers, Mason reaches the computer and Karina shows up out of nowhere to join him.
What's that noise?
Jesus!
I think it's a dial-up modem. Not sure what it's doing in this futuristic radio tower, but whatever.
Told you to wait by the car.
Karina seems convinced that the Shroud are coming for her, but Mason assures her they were all wiped out in the war.
There's no Shroud. They've been gone long before you were even born.
The more immediate threat turns out to be Mason's commanding officer Stockton, who has ordered the crash site to be bombed to cover up the mess.
Biosafety 5. You are authorized for ordnance drop.
Oh boy, we've changed sides less than an hour in.
You son of a bitch. You're covering your tracks.
Now you fight Alliance soldiers in addition to the scavengers. Whatever, I had a bigger emotional reaction to the plasma rifle the Alliance soldiers drop, even though it does turn the HUD green. Not only do I not care about this twist, but I saw it coming. Disregarding the fact that this is one of the most overused tropes of all time, the manual lists Alliance soldiers in the enemies section. At that moment, more enemies attack, so Mason leaves Karina alone and heads off to activate the base turrets to help her out. The last 2 times you left her alone turned out so well. Mason and Karina communicate through comm links, giving us a spectacular opportunity to hear their voice actors phone it in some more.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
What's taking so long?
Hold on.
While he's in the basement powering up generators, Karina is captured. This time, though, she manifests crazy psychic powers and blows up. Mason finds her in a crater basking in the afterglow. No, seriously, what does this look like to you?
I heard my name.
What are you talking about? I heard my name?
I heard my name.
What? This game makes no sense! Then Mason starts narrating.
But he didn't know. There were now 2 infections.
Mason, you might want to speak up. The music is drowning you out again.
But he didn't know. There were now 2 infections.
Don't say it like it's big news, we already know. The next scene begins with Mason and Karina walking around somewhere else entirely with no indication of how they got there.
Shroud! That's Shroud!
They run into an Alliance patrol, and Karina freaks out because she thinks it's the Shroud. This is just a weak excuse to get her out of the picture while you fight your way to a train station. Since it's such a big part of the game, I should probably talk about the weapon upgrades. You can find weapon upgrade cores just sitting around in the environments, and you can upgrade each of your weapons 3 times. The first tier costs only 1 core, the second 2, and the third 3 cores. Without the manual, you won't know what the weapons upgrades are before you buy them and try them out a few times, and some of the upgrades are just idiotic. For example, the first tier upgrade for the grenade launcher gives you a detonator to touch off bombs manually. Okay, cool, but because there's no alt-fire modes in this game, it replaces the original fire and forget mode. But don't fear, because the grenades are still detonated by a fuse just like they always were. Except that means your handy detonator is useless for laying traps or any of the other uses a manual detonator might have. So basically what you get is the ability to airburst your grenades. Only problem is, the fuse is lengthened to make the detonator slightly more useful, and since after every grenade fired Mason puts away the gun and pulls out the detonator, you can't shoot multiple grenades at a time. The third tier upgrade for the launcher makes the grenade stick to enemies on contact, which would be cool, except that before you get the final upgrade, grenades explode on contact, which is way more useful than sticking. Despite all this, the grenade launcher is the only truly useful weapon in the game, and since grenades are plentiful and good against everything, you'll use them all the time. None of the other weapons offer anything. There's an inaccurate assault rifle with a high rate of fire, just like in every other sci-fi game, but it doesn't have a secondary grenade launcher like you might expect, because that's its own separate gun. In fact, there are no secondary fire modes in this game, which is weird, because it's made by the same guys who did Unreal and Unreal Tournament. Instead, you get a weak scope on the right mouse button. There aren't even all that many weapons, about 6 in total if you don't include the bone saw and the healing tool, which I sure as hell don't. There's a shotgun, which is pretty good but has useless second and third tier upgrades, a sniper rifle, which is moderately effective but so normal in every way you'll forget you even have it. The rocket launcher is useless before you upgrade because there's no lock-on, making it impossible to hit with, and useless after upgrades because the lock-on rockets track too aggressively and overshoot their targets. Lastly, there's the plasma gun, which is cool, but very difficult to use effectively. It fires automatically, but if you hold the mouse button down, it charges up and ejects its core in a blob of energy. This is the only weapon with a secondary function, so I guess it didn't warrant a secondary fire button all to itself. The only problem is, you can only fire it automatically by holding the mouse button down, which is the same way you activate its secondary fire ability. So, in order to use the plasma gun, you have to pulse the trigger in a weird rhythm, which is difficult to do if you switch to the gun in combat. So, you'll never fucking use it! The only weapon with any promise in this game is Mason's bone saw, which is his go-to melee weapon that he collects immediately after the crash at the start of the game. It can't be upgraded and is pathetically uninteresting. When you pull it out, it pops on like a lightsaber, except with wicked serrations. Never mind how you can make serrations out of an energy weapon or why you would bother. Regardless, Pariah takes this opportunity for glorious carnage and totally wastes it. A bone saw is used for amputations, right? And the game is already rated M. And the manual describes in detail how it severs and cauterizes arteries instantly. Why can't we use it to hack off limbs? Not to sound too bloodthirsty, but that would be freaking awesome. Instead, we get some shitty flailing motion that only has like 2 frames of animation, and it takes 3 or 4 hits to kill a guy. If I'm going into so much detail about the weapons, it's because there's not much else to this game. During actual gameplay, the story isn't advanced at all, except for the 1 or 2 times Mason narrates. During the level, you're just fighting and trying to find upgrade cores for your weapons. This makes the game feel very disconnected from the story, and it's not helped by the fact that the area you end a level in rarely matches up to the cutscene immediately following it. Most games with a well-told story advance the story while you play. When the cutscenes are disconnected with the gameplay, the story makes no sense and the player isn't invested in it. Nothing in the gameplay of Pariah suggests that Mason and Karina are trying to solve the mystery of the virus. You kill stuff and get rewarded with a cutscene at the end of every level. Maybe I wouldn't mind so much, but the gameplay is fairly simplistic. It's like an Unreal game, but without the cool weapons and secondary fire modes. There's almost never any dialogue or story progression during missions. All you get is an endless procession of enemy taunts, which are truly pathetic.
Do re mi fa so long, sucker!
I'm not gonna start using that one anytime soon. And they're always saying shit like, "Give it up, Mason," and "Nice try, Doc," even at the beginning of the game when they have no idea who you are. Could be your reputation as a combat demon precedes you. If there's more than 3 or so enemies in an area, they'll taunt so frequently that they interrupt each other's lines, sometimes with the same one.
You ever play poker, Doc? Because we're about to flush you out.
We're coming for you, Doc. Consider yourself malpractice. We're coming for you, Doc. Consider yourself malpractice.
Hey, Doc! It's not you we want, it's the girl!
You're a dead man.
After you finish the level, there's another weird cutscene. Mason and Karina sneak onto a steampunk train. I honestly don't know why it's all purple and brass. It doesn't seem to fit with the visual style of the rest of the game. All seems to be going well, but then for no reason at all, Mason decides to shoot up the place.
What's going on?
Stay in here. Keep your head down.
Don't leave me.
I'll be back for you. I promise.
Nobody knows you're on the train. They seriously don't. We saw you sneak on earlier, and when the level begins, the enemies aren't on alert. Why are you doing this? The only reason I can think of is that Mason is the bloodthirsty spawn of the Grim Reaper who needs to keep up a constant body count or his ability to commit wholesale slaughter diminishes. Perhaps in response to Mason shooting up the train, the Alliance military sends in dropships of reinforcements. Tons of incoming dropships, for like half a goddamn hour. There's 10 of them and they come at you one at a time. Every other dropship is guaranteed to drop off its payload of 3 soldiers before you can destroy it, so you have to leave the turret to take them out. But hey, you think, I got the rocket launcher on this level, so once the dropships are past the turret's firing radius, I can shoot them down before they drop. You can't. The rocket launcher is useless against the dropships. It's not the end of the world because the next dropship won't show up until you kill the guys dropped off by the last one. Actually, killing the guys is tough because the dropship will keep shooting at you with a laser cannon that deals 1 health square of damage per shot. But you're invulnerable while in the turret, so you can just sit there, allow the dropship to deliver its payload, wait for it to fly away, and then hop out and kill the guys. Why am I talking so much about this turret defense level? Because it's fucking awful! This is why nobody remembers this game! Point your crosshair at a fucking flying toaster and hold mouse 1 until it dies. Rinse and fucking repeat. 3 billion rounds later, the last dropship crash lands on the train, totally derailing it and killing Mason in the process. Oh, thank God. He sees the light at the end of the tunnel and then succumbs to his injuries. I have no pity. You brought this upon yourself. Nobody knew you were on the train, but you had to go massacring Alliance soldiers and bring the reinforcements down on your head. And now you've been horrifically killed. I have no sympathy at all. Sadly, Mason isn't really dead, and while he's unconscious, he dreams of a girl laughing. Jack! No, this isn't supposed to make sense yet. There's nothing overtly wrong with this kind of in media res story, but in Pariah's case, some serious work needs to be done. Nobody says you need to front-load your game with an hour of exposition and history, but at this point in the game, I don't know what the context of the story is, and it's negatively impacting my ability to care about the characters. When I see a catastrophic train wreck involving 2 of the main characters, and my only thought is, thank God the fucking turret level is over, you're doing it wrong. By the time Mason wakes up, Karina has been taken to the massive prison complex called the Anvil, which is run by Stockton. Mason follows her and arrives during a scavenger attack on the complex. While Mason is fighting his way through the Anvil, he comes across engagements between the Alliance, scavengers, and escaped prisoners, which has the potential to make for tactically interesting 3-way engagements, but it doesn't, and here's why. The AI cannot damage each other. You can just sit there and watch the fights, and they'll never end. Prisoners will cluster around an enemy, endlessly wailing on him unsuccessfully. Flying combat drones will fire ineffectually at scavengers with lasers that do 1 health square of damage per hit when used on you. It's just surreal to watch these static combats between enemies and realize that somebody programmed this. This was made by people. At least I assume it was made by people. It might actually make more sense if this entire game was churned out by some hopelessly generic emotionless robots. Say, Ubisoft. Sure as shit doesn't help that the Anvil is the biggest area in the game, and none of it furthers the story until the very end. Pariah's environments are big, but the size counts for nothing when you spend all of your time riding slow-moving platforms to get around them, or in the case of the prison, fighting through 4 iterations of the same copy-pasted courtyard filled with enemies in a row. A huge open level with nothing fun in it is no better than a small linear level. Once inside the prison tower, Mason finds a recording Stockton made, which handedly explains his motivation. See, Stockton's father developed weapons technology during the war with the Shroud 30 years ago, and one of their projects was to study a Shroud virus that gives the host the ability to generate energy. Unfortunately, it makes them very unstable and prone to spontaneous explosion.
For the cellular transformation to occur. Last month, there was a violent explosion in the containment area.
Just a minor drawback. Stockton is reviving his father's work, and for that he needs Karina, one of the Shroud's test subjects who was captured and put into cryo 30 years ago to keep the virus from progressing. In order to recover her, Stockton made a deal with the scavengers to shoot down the dropship at the beginning of the game after he'd reassigned its escorts. Remember that from the first cutscene?
Looks like you're on your own.
It's actually pretty clever how the story fits together.
Karina didn't just have the virus. She was the virus.
Yeah, nice read. Probably shouldn't have gone with that take. Or this version of the script. Or this concept for a game. Stockton reveals he has the virus too and gasses Mason.
Looks like you and I have something in common after all.
I doubt it.
Mason is put into a cryopod and onto Stockton's transport. In the air, someone shows up and releases Mason. Who was that chick, and where did she go? You don't really get any time to wonder what the fuck is going on because a scavenger dropship shows up. They're pissed because Stockton didn't pay them for capturing Karina, so they start shooting missiles at you. Mason has to shoot the missiles down because he's the only one on the dropship. I can't even describe how stupid this setup is. When the missiles don't work, the scavenger dropship gets in close and Mason boards it to steal an escape pod. Why? It's the same kind of dropship as the one you started on. Why didn't you take your own escape pod as soon as they started shooting missiles? You could be gone by now! Mason's escape pod crash lands near Stockton's backup base and he wakes up from his third horrific wreck so far this game. He locates Stockton just outside the base and they have a nice chat. This whole scene comes across like a poorly dubbed anime.
You're infected too.
There's a little bit of shroud in all of us.
Go on then. Kill me, you son of a bitch. I'm ready. Not yet, Jack. I want you to see something first.
Stockton has a captured shroud weapon called the Titan's Fist, which is powered by the energy of a person infected with the virus, and he immediately puts it to use shooting down the shroud ships that just showed up. Wait, what? So the shroud really did come back? That makes Stockton's motivation seem a whole lot more sympathetic. Stockton was the only one who saw it coming, and he did something about it. Between him and Mason, who, as we know, is an unstoppable messiah of war, they could probably take the shroud and keep humanity safe forever. Or Stockton could try to kill you. What was that I said about being sympathetic? Yeah, that was untrue. He's a power-hungry maniac. Then Karina runs past in the background. Wasn't she Stockton's prisoner? Did she escape? Why is she running randomly through the frame? Anybody? Well, Mason runs away from Stockton to chase her, but all he finds is Stockton again. Before they fight, Stockton explains why he wants Mason dead.
Don't think of this as an execution, Jack. It's more like the extinction of a competing strain.
In English, please?
Not willful, but compulsory.
I don't quite... What? You know what makes any FPS better? Boss fights. No, wait, that's not true. Boss fights have no business being in an FPS. Not like it fucking matters, so let's go. Stockton is protected by some psionic field that manifests through his virus powers. He's also wielding the aforementioned Titan's Fist, which he charges up and then sweeps a laser around the arena. This game was coded by a fucking mental patient, so Stockton can't aim up and down. If you crouch, you can completely avoid his laser cannon. I don't just mean you crouch when he attacks. Oh no, if you're crouching before he starts his attack, he'll still sweep the laser across at head height, missing entirely every time. Whenever you drain his health bar, he runs to a charging station to regenerate. While he's charging, the shields covering the stations drop, allowing you to destroy them. Aha, you say, this is finally the perfect opportunity to use my rocket launcher. No, it isn't. Half a magazine of assault rifle ammunition does the same job faster. Hope you didn't buy those rocket launcher upgrades, because they just go to waste. Once all the stations are down, Stockton can't regen and swiftly gets killed off for real. Karina meets Mason outside and suggests the two of them run away together.
Let's get out of here, Jack. Escape. Together. Go somewhere where no one can find us.
The hell? She hardly knows this guy. Regardless, the Shroud show up to take her away, and Mason does nothing.
Nice work, Doctor.
Mason is a traitor? No way, how did he keep it secret? We were playing as him for like 6 hours. Okay, but I'm being kind of serious. Most games wouldn't think to do this kind of twist because it makes no sense for you not to know your own character's motivation.
I'd like to see my daughter.
Mason gives some vague and barely audible narration about how the Shroud can create life, which he insinuates is the cause of the war 30 years ago.
The Shroud War was about one thing. Life. Anyone could take it away. But the Shroud? They could give it back.
We're led to understand that Mason's daughter is dead, perhaps explaining his weird dream about girls' laughter earlier, and that the Shroud were supposed to resurrect her as payment.
I kept my end of the deal.
Well, not quite.
But the Shroud pull a Stockton and refuse to pay.
My debt would never be paid in full.
Mason realizes that even if he did get his daughter back, she'd be a Shroud. Yuck. This big reveal does not work for me. If I'd known about his daughter all along, yeah, sure, I would have played ball, but being told about it now makes it feel like I was cheated out of the rest of the game. Like the box says, I am Jack Mason, so it just doesn't make any sense for me to betray myself. But just like that, Mason has a change of heart and assaults the Shroud base head-on, discarding all of his powerful upgraded weapons and his medkit in favor of the Titan's Fist, which as it turns out, sucks. Instead of the sweeping laser attack that Stockton used, you get a small explosion or a charged-up big explosion. The Titan's Fist has an energy bar instead of ammo, which is replenished along with health at various charge stations sprinkled around the Shroud base. The similarities to the final level of Half-Life 2 end there, however. Except for the strangely familiar bad guys. And the architecture. Okay, so it's a lot like the ending level of Half-Life 2. The final enemy is that lady who released you from the cryo casket earlier. Okay, nice stab at continuity there, Pariah, but it is way too late. Basically, you have to shoot her with a Titan's Fist while also fighting waves of Shroud ninjas who carry a pair of glowing daggers and are invisible until they attack. This game just got fucking weird. Even the boss room is stocked with 4 charging stations, so you can just blaze away until she falls, after which Mason finds Karina. In like the 5 minutes between Karina being taken by the Shroud and now, she's been hooked up to a machine which is draining all of her blood.
Jack, there is no way out.
Realizing she's going to die, she asks Mason to kill her. Then, did you run out of animation money? Are we supposed to use our imaginations? Hello?
Finish this.
I want to, but I don't think I can.
What are you guys doing?
Oh my god. Jesus. Fuck. I'm so sorry.
Mason can't bring himself to shoot Karina and kills himself instead. As the lights come back up and the Shroud soldiers burst into the room, Karina loses it. It's established that emotion and stress can cause those infected to spontaneously combust. But I do wonder why she didn't explode when they hooked her up to a reverse dialysis machine and started sucking her blood out. That seems pretty stressful to me. And for that matter, why didn't she explode when Mason betrayed her? I didn't see that coming, and I am Jack Mason. Still, this is the best part of the game, to be honest. I don't mean that sarcastically, like, oh thank God they're all dead. But the acting is still pretty terrible. I mean, really, what does this sound like to you?
Oh my god. Jesus.
It's okay. It's okay.
And the way they black out the screen isn't dramatic, just distracting. This might be a sequel hook, since we know Karina can survive her own spontaneous combustion, but I doubt it. For one, she had her blood sucked out, so there's that. And 2, the whole building collapses when she blows, so unless she can also survive being crushed to death by a dozen semi-destructible pillars, not happening. Even so, the ending is pretty gutsy and does a lot to make up for the rest of the story. Maybe it even would make the game more memorable, but that doesn't help if you don't make it this far, and honestly, that wouldn't surprise me. I want to say that Digital Extremes took a bold stab at minimalistic storytelling, but nothing about Pariah seems boldly done. There's nothing really bad about Pariah, but it's so uninspired, so incredibly bland that there's just no reason to play it. At least bad games can be interesting, but this is just shy of good in everything it does. Pariah does have a fairly comprehensive multiplayer, though it didn't catch on like Digital Extremes hoped it would. Since it's built on the Unreal Engine, it's fairly standard. Even some of the death messages are the same. All the modes you'd expect, like deathmatches, CTF capture point, and attack and defender here, and there are bots for offline practice mode. The multiplayer does include the weapon upgrades, and the vehicles, which see more use than they do in single player. Where it breaks down is the class system. You choose from one of the preset classes, each of which carries only 2 weapons, and you can't pick up weapons from dead enemies, so it loses variety compared to the genuine article. So, that's Pariah, and perhaps needless to say, it didn't do so well. Reviews were extremely tepid, and sales were even tepid-er. As a result, the planned sequel was canned in favor of a budget shooter with a multiplayer focus. Wait, budget game? I'm there. Camera on. Fucking getting battery light already. That's just great. We've got battery sign. That's not a very good joke. I apologize.